We've all heard about Bitcoin, and we've probably heard that it's this revolutionary thing. But for most of us, that's about all we know. Why is there a sudden surge in interest? Everyone seems to be talking about it, everyone seems to be buying it, everyone seems to be making money in it. People are claiming to becoming millionaires through it, while the rest of us are here sitting and thinking, what the hell is Bitcoin even in the first place? What is crypto? What is blockchain? It's money, but then it's worth more than money, but then we can't really buy a lot of stuff with it, but we can buy all this digital stuff with other cryptocurrencies. We've got the likes of Gary Vee heavily backing this, and then we've got Elon Musk buying huge amounts of it into Tesla, and then that's causing all kinds of madness. This is exactly what I want to dive into through this video, to unravel this space in a way that all of us non-finance, non-trading people can understand. And the story begins with the inception of money in the first place. To us, trading with paper money has become a normal day-to-day activity. We don't question it, nor do we think deeply about where it originated. But before paper money existed, the way people would trade would be specifically through precious metals, which they would melt and make coins from. The reason why people would trade with these precious metals is because of their scarcity. They were not widely available and easy to find. And it's because of this scarcity that people trusted in using it as a means of transaction. Because they're scarce, people agreed to their value. And because everyone agreed on their value, they would be happy to exchange their own goods for that gold coin or silver coin, and trusting that they'd be able to use that gold coin to exchange goods with someone else sometime in the future. But hold on a minute here. Clearly you're gonna run into some problems, because say you become a very wealthy man or woman through all your smart trades. What are you gonna do with all those silver and gold coins that you've stored up? Where are you gonna store them? You can't just be walking around with them casually on the streets in the year 200 AD. Some next man comes through and he ends up robbing you, and you're left there in an utter penniless state, contemplating the purpose of life now that you've lost all your life savings. And this is where paper notes came into fruition. So take a look at this old dollar bill. To me as a non-American, this looks like a very normal dollar bill. But if you zoom in to this area here, it says $1 silver, payable to the bearer on demand. Now, paper notes or paper money has existed in many forms, but in its purest form, the government would issue a paper note which they would promise that you can exchange for a set amount of silver or gold. So they would promise, and therefore this was called a promissory note. So technically you should be able to take this paper note and take it to the government, and once you hand that in, they should be able to give you $1 silver coin. But long story short, people then got used to trading these paper notes between each other without ever handing them in for the dollar, silver or gold equivalent. So then eventually the government just severed the relationship between the paper dollar and gold and silver. And it also meant that then the government could continue printing paper notes without ever having the storage of those gold and silver somewhere where they usually store all their money, whatever, in their safes. So here's an interesting question. Why do we continue to trade with this paper money even though we know that it's not actually backed by any gold and silver in those safes that they usually store their values, like we said? Well, the reason is because the government has made it legally binding for us to accept these paper notes as value. And so essentially we trust that the government will implement their laws, and that we will never be left in a position where we're holding all these paper notes and no one will say that they're not going to accept them, because we all together trust that the laws are going to be implemented. So what also comes out of this is that this means that all of this is controlled by a central entity, the establishment. All right, that makes it sound a bit like a conspiracy, but I'm telling you, this is not a conspiracy, it's actually serious. And it essentially means that it's controlled by this central entity, which is the government or the branch of the government, the finance branch, the central bank. and they decide on how much money is printed and how much money is in circulation. They are in control of all of the transactions that are happening, and they keep a record of that. This also means that then corruption can enter into that, or if there's no corruption, at least this is not a transparent system. The central bank records who transacts with who. The central bank decides on whether transactions are accepted. The central bank decides who can be involved in these transactions. Then the central bank decides which countries you can transact with. This is the meaning of a centralized finance system. And this is an important term here which underpins this whole cryptocurrency world, alright? This is where the story picks up a bit. Come 2007, we have this mystical guy who's never really revealed himself other than asking us to call him Satoshi Nakamoto. Or if you want to say it right, Satoshi Nakamoto Sensei. And he thinks, hold on here, why do we have to rely on the central bank to approve transactions and record them? Surely there must be a more efficient and transparent way of having all of this happen. So for the next 3 years, he works to publish this revolutionary way where people can transact with each other without the need for approval from a central bank. And he calls it Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Bitcoin is therefore the first ever cryptocurrency made. So this leads to the question, what is cryptocurrency? Vsauce. I forget that joke. And cryptocurrency is essentially this money or digital money currency that has its distribution and creation regulated through cryptography. So what's cryptography? And cryptography just means that this whole process is virtually locked. No one can interfere with it. The transactions that are made are recorded publicly. Anyone can go back and see what transactions are being made. Everyone can see how much of that digital money is out there in circulation. When the transaction is made, it is verified and then recorded. No one can change those records, and no one can come in and try and create some fake money through it because it's digital. So how does Bitcoin actually work? And this is where it gets really interesting. When Satoshi made Bitcoin, he made it in such a way that only a limited amount of Bitcoins could be generated. And specifically, we're talking about only 21 million Bitcoins. Remember when we mentioned about gold and silver and the reason why we value them is because of scarcity? The exact same thing is happening here. So the way the whole thing works is that you have miners. Yeah, I mean, not miners, like miners, but you have miners. Like, you know how people mine gold and silver ores and stuff, yeah, miners. And these miners are essentially people with these supercomputers whose jobs are to solve these difficult algorithmical equations, and for solving these equations they are rewarded with bitcoins. And these bitcoins come, or they are generated from that 21 million Bitcoin possibility. The first Bitcoins ever made or generated were by Satoshi Sensei himself, where he mined those Bitcoins and he got some Bitcoins. Who knows, he might be somewhere around the world now with hella Bitcoins and he's rich, or he might have sold them or whatever. But back then, when you would mine Bitcoin or you would solve these equations, you would get about 50 coins for solving an equation. As people continue to solve these equations, they mine more coins, and more people then have coins to transact with each other. The question that comes out of this is, what's the significance of solving these algorithms and these equations in the first place? Well, remember that we said earlier on, when people transact with each other, these transactions need to be verified. The solving of these equations actually lead to the verification of Bitcoin transactions between people. This is now starting to make sense. So check this out. This is how the loop works. People would trade Bitcoins with each other, and miners would come through and verify those transactions by solving those equations. These miners then get a reward for solving that equation, and that reward comes in Bitcoin, either as a percentage from that transaction, but also by generating new Bitcoin. Now, those transactions that get verified are then approved, and they are then recorded on this public ledger for everyone to see what transactions are happening. Each equation that is solved is known as a block and is connected to any of the previous transactions that had been verified. This connection between blocks is known as a chain, and this is where we get the name blockchain. All right, see how this all came together? And also now you can see how this system is decentralized. There is no central bank to decide or control how this whole process works. This process just works on its own. It's self-regulating. The other thing that's important to mention is the scarcity aspect. So every 4 years, the reward that people get for mining Bitcoin is halved. So we mentioned at the start, for mining Bitcoin, maybe people would get about 50 Bitcoins and then it just continued to reduce. This also means that as time passes, it becomes harder to mine more Bitcoin because you need to solve more equations. At the moment, there are about 18 million Bitcoins that have been mined, so there are only about 3 million left. But these are going to be hard to mine anyway, so it's going to take a while until we get to the end of that. And this nicely takes us onto what does this all mean? Well, blockchain has become the basis for a whole host of new currencies and technologies, one of which is also very famous, Ethereum. And I'm not going to talk about it in this video. If you want me to make another video about Ethereum, then let me know and we can talk about exactly what Ethereum is. But essentially, Bitcoin came to solve the transparency issues of transactions between people and also to decentralize this whole thing. Bitcoin has a market cap of $1 trillion, and that's how much money people have been pumping into Bitcoin as an entity. And clearly people are believing in it. They are believing in it as a technology. They are believing in it as a currency, and it stood the test of quite a long time. I mean, more than 10 years now. I mean, really, cryptocurrency has the potential to change the way we live our lives, just like the internet changed everything about how we live our day-to-day lives. I'm not going to go into how to trade Bitcoins and when to trade Bitcoins. This is not financial advice at the end of the day. I'm just some guy on YouTube. Actually, I'm a doctor on YouTube, so I don't give financial advice. But if it's something that you want me to talk about in terms of what I do, then happy to make a video of that in the future. So do let me know about that. But right now, this whole thing is popping, and it's popping for a reason. So this might be a sign for you to look more into it. Maybe not necessarily trade right now, but to look into it and see whether it has a place in your future finances. I hope you like this video. If you like this video, then like the video, comment, like, subscribe, holla back at your guy safe.